Ask Bendy Q&A. This is our 12th one, so that's exciting. And again, this is all focused on backbending. It's part of the Backbend Challenge for the Worldwide Splitters Network, which Fit and Bendy is very proud to be sponsoring so many wonderful backbending people. So I have a few questions that aren't from the challenge group, but most of them are, and they're all about backbending. So yay, backbending. I've decided to talk mostly about shoulders today because I had a lot of shoulder questions. So I just wanted, and I've been really nerding out on shoulders lately. I have a couple other YouTube videos up about shoulders and the way to think about shoulder structure that I will link to from this one. And I have a new DVD out called Shoulder School that's all about shoulder stabilization and alignment and strengthening and flexibility. So if you are struggling with your shoulders and your upper back, I have a few resources out there for you because you are not alone. It is one of the most problematic areas when getting into backbends, in part because we tend to be really internally rotated with our shoulders. We like to sit like this all the time. I know better, and I still find myself hunched over the computer like this. And so when you go to stretch from that internal rotation, that is really tough for your shoulder alignment, and it can put your shoulder into a bad position where you start to get some pain, and I'll get to that with some of the questions here. But the thing I can say is that if you are having a lot of tightness or pain in your shoulders, there's something going on with your alignment that you need to fix. And you probably have some imbalances in the way that your shoulders are working that need to be addressed, and that just pushing into your shoulder flexibility, pushing into it, trying to get it better, trying to push through the pain is not the best approach, because the shoulder is it's a delicate and pretty unstable joint. There's very little holding it together other than your own muscles. So if you approach it from just like, I got to try to push through it, that's when a lot of times the sun is moving. I decided to go outside today. Okay, I'm inside. I can kind of see you. That's when you start to get a lot of pain and imbalances, and you can actually get injured that way. So it's more important to fix the alignment than it is to just go crazy with it. I'm just gonna move here. Now I can see myself. Okay, so let's get started with the actual questions, and we're going to start with our shoulder questions here. So the first one is from Lucy. Hello, Lucy, and this came to us through the Fit and Bendy Facebook page. Lucy wants to ask us about when she is in bridge, she feels that her shoulders are kind of collapsed in instead of being really open. So what's happening is that her shoulders aren't right over her wrists. And when you're in a bridge, the goal is to really get the arm completely stacked up straight so that it is, it's not tilting inwards. So Lucy, what I would say is that I would be stretching your shoulders when you're not in bridge a lot, and working again on that shoulder alignment, that external rotation. So not allowing, when you're in your bridge, for your shoulders to be hunched in like this. And one way to work on that is when you're in your bridge to slightly bend your elbows. And when you bend your elbows, you want to look and see, are your elbows going out to the side like this, or are they in parallel? You would like them to be parallel to each other, because you can see that as I pull my elbows into parallel, right now, my shoulder is rotating externally. This is internal rotation. This is where you don't want to be. This is external rotation. This sun is chasing me. So you really want to be externally rotated. So if you bend your elbows slightly in the bridge and see where that alignment is, and make sure that the shoulders are externally rotated, then try to straighten the arms again, keeping that external rotation. That will start to help you feel the muscles that you need in your bridge, that will start to open up the chest a lot more, and enable you to get that stack of the shoulders over the wrists that you're looking for. So for Reagan is a circus performer, an aerialist who wants to be more involved in contortion. He has a really beautiful practice, but he's feeling some limitation in his shoulders and his upper back, which is common for aerialists. And you said that you do an act where you're mostly dangling from one arm. So that one arm feels very different than the other arm. I mean, we're all a little bit imbalanced. It sounds like that act probably is going to make you more than a little imbalanced. It's going to exaggerate that. So I would say that when you're not performing, when you're training, to really give some love and attention to balancing those out. So if one is much more flexible, stretch the other one extra. If one is a lot stronger, strengthen the other one to start to balance them out. The other thing is to really work again on the strength of what I call the outside line of the shoulder. So that's the back of the shoulder, these muscles back here, because a lot of times when you're hanging, you tend to get very strong through the upper trapezius. So this muscle up here going up into the neck, and the front of the shoulder and the deltoid tends to get really built up, and that restricts some of the mobility of the shoulders and the upper back going backwards, and building up that strength through the upper back in order to articulate through the upper back. The upper back doesn't tend to want to bend. It wants to go forward because naturally the spine, the upper spine between the shoulder blades leans a little bit forward. So we have to use the muscles to get it to go the other direction. It won't usually, for most of us, just naturally do that. It takes a little bit of work and focus. But your practice is looking beautiful. I would say that if this is something you want to do professionally, I would definitely recommend trying to find a coach, because that will help to accelerate your progress quite a bit. And it sounds like you're already in the circus world, so hopefully you can find someone good to work with. I can't wait to see how it turns out. I'd love to come and see you perform someday. For Shakira, hello Shakira. Loving the challenge, back and shoulders, daily stretching. Yay, that's great that your back is responding well to it. Everybody's different. I'm giving up. I'm just gonna let the sun shine in my face. Day today here in Los Angeles. But when I take my arms up and back, I get a pinching sensation in the tops of my shoulders, which doesn't seem to be going away and is hindering my process. I usually can just breathe through the discomfort, but it's too painful. Don't try to breathe through this. We have to fix it first. Don't just push through it, okay? Any tips on what be causing this and how I can get past it? It feels like I will never be able to do the arm rotation for King Pigeon. So a couple things. I'm actually going to answer your last question first, which is about the rotation in King Pigeon. So King Pigeon is where you're in a pigeon position, you reach back and you try to grab your foot. So I see a lot of people doing this rotational thing where I'm completely not warmed up, so I'm not going to really fully do this, but where they're kind of reaching back here and then rotating through the shoulder to get it to go. The problem with this is this rotational movement puts a lot of stress on the shoulder joint. The shoulder doesn't like to move through rotations like that with weight pulling it back in the other direction. I mean, it's fine if you have no weight on it, but if you're pulling, your leg is pulling you back and you're rotating. I have seen so many people get injuries in their shoulders from for pole dancers especially. There are a lot of movements where people are reaching and grabbing and trying to rotate the shoulder. And it's really not good for your shoulder. So what I recommend doing instead is bringing that foot in, crossing over your body with the opposite arm, and then taking that up and over. And then you can try to reach back with the other arm and grab as well if you want to do both hands. But this reaching across and then bringing it up and over will take all of that rotational stress off of your shoulders and put your shoulders actually in a much healthier, better position. It's also going to bring opposite hand to opposite foot, which is easier to square your hips and shoulders. If you have like your left hand grabbing your right foot, then your right hand grabbing your right foot, which tends to rotate us, twist our bodies towards the hip that's stretching, which makes it harder to find the alignment. So that's one thing, and that holds true for everyone who's working on King Pigeon. Please try not to do that rotational unless your foot is right on your head. If your foot's already on your head and there's no real weight pulling on your arm, that's fine. But at that point, you should be working on just going straight back and grabbing rather than doing the rotation. So first part of your question, Shakira, in terms of this pinching that you're feeling in the shoulder, from looking at your pictures, your shoulders look very internally rotated. That means that if you think about where your armpit is looking, your armpit's kind of looking out to the side like this, and your shoulders turning inward towards your ear. And you never want your shoulders to be internally rotated when you're going into a deep shoulder stretch, any kind of extension, because what that does is it takes this arm bone, the humerus here, it's not very humorous, and in rotating it internally and bringing it backward, you are actually pinching something. It's not just you. It's anatomy. It happens to everyone at a certain point. Some people just can go further before it starts to pinch. You're pinching some of the tendons and the connective tissue between the top of the arm bone and the pokey acromion process right here, where your clavicle and your scapula meet. So that's why you always want to be externally rotated before you reach back. Now, this might take a little playing around with to try to find the right position, and it might feel harder at first just because you're not used to it. But if you can find this rotation, if you think about bringing your elbows straight forward and then reaching straight back from there, and think about trying to just get your hand onto your shoulder as you do that, rather than being here, right? And then trying to reach back from here. This is internal. This is external, and we want to be externally rotated in the shoulder. And if you or anyone else starts to feel that pinch in the shoulder while you are stretching, that is generally something to be avoided, because that can lead to injury. So check your alignment, realign your shoulders, work on strengthening that outside line. And like I said, I have a whole other video about inside-outside line and how to strengthen that I will link to. So that should really help that particular problem, Shakira. All right, thank you for that question. So that was good for shoulders. Hey guys, doing a broadcast. Birds, they're so rude. I just put up the bird feeder, so they're super excited now. It's my fault. Couple questions about Cobra. For Samantha, I would really like some stretches to do to get upper back flexibility. My lower back bends, but my upper back doesn't. Yeah, a lot of people have this problem. Like I said, the lower back naturally bends backwards. If you look at the way the spine is curved, the lower back curves so you can bend backwards, but then the upper back naturally curves forward. So part of it is just feeling the muscles of the upper back that lift the chest. If you think, I'm going to turn sideways to you. So you can see my upper back naturally curves forward. You see my lower back here naturally curves backwards. Easy to bend there. Upper back wants to bend forward. So if I start to bend backward without focusing on my upper back, what happens is I naturally just start to bend in the lower back. The only way to get the upper back to really bend is to engage the muscles that make it bend. So that means externally rotating the shoulders and then finding these muscles underneath the shoulder blades. You can do this by extending your arms out to the side here. I'm going to move back a little bit. Extending your arms out to the side here. Rotate your palms to face backwards, and then see how that triggers the muscles underneath your shoulder blades. Then use those muscles to start to lift the chest. I'll show that to you from the side. The arms turn back, and that makes the chest lift. There. And now I'm using these muscles underneath my shoulder blades to get my upper back to start to go backwards, even if it's not very excited about it. And at the beginning, you might not get very much range of motion, but you'll start to get more and more. And then as you get used to that, you'll be able to feel it in your Cobra too. So you almost want to feel like you're sliding your hands back towards your hips and using those upper back muscles to think about lifting your sternum right here up towards the ceiling, pushing from underneath the shoulder blades. And making sure that your shoulders are down out of your ears. This is another problem. If you allow this sinking to happen, where the shoulders kind of come up into the ears and you're pressing down like this, then it's really going to make it difficult for you to get that upper back extension. So you have to press the shoulders down and think about making as much space as possible between your ear and the head of your shoulder, which is going to give you much more room to just drop your head back and use the full upper extension of your spine. So other than that, I think your Cobra looks really good. You just need to find that muscular engagement in your Cobra in order to get that to open up. And I also have another YouTube video with a stretch that we call moose stretch, just because people make grunty moose noises when they're doing it. And it's against the wall, and it's a stretch to try to isolate the upper back. So I will link to that as well. But if you look up on the Fit and Bendy YouTube page, you can see it's upper back stretch thing. It's called technical. All right, so that's for Samantha. And for Sabine, also asking how to improve on Cobra. Your Cobra actually looks great, Sabine. I think it looks really beautiful. Just keep practicing. I mean, the same tips for upper back extension that would be helpful for Samantha, I think would be helpful for you. Also, maybe trying to find a little bit of tuck in the pelvis. A lot of times we just let the pelvis drop and the butt kind of stick up in the air. But the more you can tuck your pelvis, the more you can get the extension through the hip flexors to think about really lifting up out of the hips. But your position looks great. Just keep doing what you're doing, Sabina. You're doing wonderfully. And for Johanna, who asked about pigeon last week and found those tips helpful. So yay, I'm glad that was helpful. I can't wait to see some more pictures from you. In Cobra pose, do I want my legs to be together, parallel, or slightly spread? Excellent question, and the answer is all of the above. Each position with the legs is going to give you a slightly different stretch. The closer together your legs are, very loud birds. The closer together your legs are, the more pressure that's going to put on your lower back. It's going to be harder to open up your hips. It's just harder with your legs together for most of us. I usually do my Cobra with my legs about hip width apart. Then if you're trying to go really, 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 really deep, you may find that your legs just naturally start to open. You want to try to fight that. You don't want to end up with your legs super wide. But that said, if you're just starting out and you're new and it feels impossible to do it with your legs closer together, then you might want to try opening the legs a little bit more. And I would say the same is true for people learning to do bridge or for learning to do a standing back bend. If you are trying to do with your legs really close together because that's the ideal, but you're new and you're having a really hard time, just open your legs wider. Just open your legs wider. It's okay. You're learning. And as you get better and you get more comfortable and you get more flexible, they can come closer together. I don't think that that's something that's it's not going to hurt you to do it with your legs wide. And it can be part of the learning process. Because with the legs together, it can end up, if your hips are tight in that position, putting a lot of pressure on the lower back, and that's not what we want. So that's the answer. Try all three. Try different positions and see what happens and see how it feels in your body. Each one will give you a little bit of a different experience. All right, only two more. There was a question about camel from Jen King. And I was wondering about this move. Do I walk my hands up my legs or try to bend my elbows to get the stretch a bit further? I feel like I've hit a stop point with my hands just on my ankles. Thanks in advance. So what she's saying is that in regular camel, which is back, in regular camel, you're just going to reach back like this and grab your ankle. I know I'm not quite far enough back for you to see my whole body, but there's my foot. I'm grabbing it, leaning back like this. This is going to be a limited position here just because when you're in that position with your shoulders in that alignment, there's only so deep that you can go. So you can work, just from the photo that you showed me, I think you could work on getting more of that active flexibility in the chest and trying to make a bigger arc with your back. But if you really want to start going deeper, then you're going to need to change your arm position. And that would mean reaching back here and trying to touch your hands to the floor. This takes a lot more strength and control. You can do it at first just with your hands crossed over your chest. So you're going to lean back with your hands over your chest and gradually start to bring the arms up the body as you feel that you are strong enough and not freaking out enough, because that's normal at first, to control that. The backbending sequence at the end of the Bendy Body DVD shows some of those positions where you start to bring the arms up the body like this. And that can be you can go a lot deeper that way, because eventually you get the hands to touch the floor, and then you start to work on walking the hands in towards the feet, and then you can grab the feet that way, and it's a much, much deeper stretch. But go slowly with it. You can also reach back and touch a wall or a chair or a couch behind you, so you don't have to go all the way to the floor. That's a way to take small steps into it. With backbending, it's always good to take small steps to make sure that you're in control of whatever is happening in your body, and not pushing anything too far too fast. But your position looks good. Like I said, if in this position, if you don't feel quite ready to do the hands up version, I would work on finding those muscles in the upper back that we were just talking about and using them to try to lift the chest up even higher, and think about looking back, trying to look at the floor right between your feet. And that will give you a little bit of a deeper engagement as well. Nice work. And for last question for Esmeralda Vera. Esmeralda has a question about split catch ankle, which is when you are in a split and you reach back and try to grab your back leg. So that's a good deep back bending move. It uses a lot of hip flexibility. Are you supposed to square your hips from the beginning? Yes, you are supposed to square your hips in the beginning. So you want to square your hips in the split. From there, go into your back bend, the deepest back bending possible. Check in with those hips again. They're gonna want to pull out. They're gonna start to open on you. Keep squaring them, because if you allow the hips to open, you're gonna end up in this sort of wonky, twisted position where if you bring your hands up, you're just going to fall over, and it's not going to look pretty. It's not going to feel good in your body. So you've got to keep the hips square in order to find the correct position. And also, how can I get more stretch in my shoulders? Well, aside from everything that we've just been talking about with shoulders, when you are doing your split catch ankle, you want to get into it in a progression. So you start in your split. You reach back into your back bend. So hands are still on the floor at this point. If I were warmed up, I would show you, but I'm just going to walk you through this. So you're in your split. You're going to drop back into your back bend. And in your split with your hands at your side, you're just going to go as far back into that back bend as possible, tucking your pelvis, using those muscles that we were talking about to lift the chest, trying to touch your head to the back of your leg. Get as far as possible. Then bend your knee. Bring your knee to your head. Then opposite hand reaches up, grabs that leg. Now, if you can balance in this position, you can bring up both hands. Otherwise, work on just holding on from one hand. Then the way that you get your upper back engaged is from holding on to that leg. You start to lift your chest, and instead of thinking about trying to straighten the leg, think about using your upper back muscles to try to push your arms straight. So you want to think about pushing that foot away from you, pushing it down back towards the floor. So you're not pulling with your leg, you're pushing with your shoulders and upper back. And that should bring the stretch more into the upper back, into the shoulders. And once you can get the arms straight in that position, your leg should be pretty close to the floor. And then all you have to do is get that extra little bit of back and usually hip flexibility to get the leg flat. I hope that makes sense, and I hope that's helpful to you. It looks like you've got a really good start on that position, but definitely getting the shoulders and the upper back more involved. The sun is moving again. I think will help you feel more complete arc of the back instead of just crunching into the lower back. Also, really think about tucking that pelvis. The more that you can tuck the pelvis and lift out of the hips, the easier it will be to do the back bend. I talk about that a little bit more in last week's Q&A, so you can check that out if you have more questions. But that's all for this week, you guys, and thank you so much for tuning in. And there will be another one next week and the week after that throughout the entire challenge, just to keep supporting you guys in case you have any questions or concerns as things move forward. So happy bendings, and I will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.